Hey, in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to change your identity. So this is also known as identity shifting. It's just a powerful way to really change who you are and who you are being. If you do this right, you can get dramatic results. In this video, I want to take you through the 3 core stages of this process. If you don't do these stages correctly, you'll never really be able to master what this process is. I'm also going to share with you, I think, the number one identity shift that everybody needs to make with this practice, even on this journey. It's the most important one. And if you do not make this one important shift, then I think every other shift you try to make just won't hold. Because this is the fundamental shift that, like I said, everybody needs to make. So I'm going to take you through these 3 stages. The first stage of this process is identifying. So identifying means you have to really look at yourself and see how you really feel about who you are right now. This might sound obvious, but it's not as simple as it might appear, because many of us don't really know how we feel about ourselves. We live in a world now where there's a lot of distractions, alcohol, social media, pornography, drugs, food, whatever. And rather than experience how we really feel about ourselves, we distract ourselves from a lot of pain, essentially, with all these distractions. Because if you were to lose all that stuff and you just had to sit on your own and be quiet, that's not pleasant for most people. But you cannot really start to change your identity till you really get a feel for how you feel about yourself deep down. Because that's real. And this is painful to look at. What I think a lot of people do, we have some narcissistic tendencies. We might think things about ourselves that aren't necessarily true. It's just like a mask we've developed in order to stop us from seeing how we really feel about ourselves. And we all wear these kind of masks to hide our flaws. So you have to get very, very brave, very conscious, very intuitive, and really get as close to yourself as you can and experience how you truly feel. If you didn't have all the money you've got, or the relationships, or the fast food, or the social media, or the alcohol, if you took all that away, how do you really feel about yourself? That's coming to ground zero. That's the foundation of your experience of yourself. That's where the real shift has to occur, on that level. And many of us have kind of stories that we've created about ourselves which aren't necessarily true. Because of the way our mind works, we need to make sense of our experience, and we make sense of experience by telling ourselves stories. So you might be an anxious person. You might have made the story that I'm anxious because maybe you got bullied when you were in school, so now you're anxious. That's a story. Maybe you struggle to make money because your parents didn't have money growing up. That probably affected you, but now you've made a story out of it, and you're constantly reinforcing these stories. And the more you hold on to these stories, the harder it is for you to change. And these stories run very deep subconsciously. And it's only when you really begin to experience what you're feeling about yourself can you start to release it. So the feeling and the stories go together, right? The stories go on psychologically, the feelings obviously go on emotionally. So the first thing you can do in this process is just pay attention to how you truly feel about yourself, deep down. Don't run from anything. And then look at your actions, your behaviors, the things that you think about, the things that you talk about, the things that you pursue or the things that you don't pursue, and really begin to get an idea of the type of person that you are. So it's a very kind of intuitive, introspective practice, right? You need to really look at yourself objectively, if you can. That's really the only way you can get a clear idea of who you are. Because many of us, it's difficult not to sometimes. We get caught up in our feelings and thoughts. I know how easy that is, but the more objective you can become, the easier it will be for you to then start to look at yourself from kind of like a bird's eye view and just see, okay, these are the things that I do. This is how I feel about myself and whatever else, right? You get a clearer picture. So the second part of this process is deprogramming. Once you've started to see these things about yourself and you really started to feel how you're feeling about yourself, you can actually begin to undo this stuff, right? Before you develop a new identity, you have to get rid of the old identity. This is why I call this deprogramming. So the way I like to do this personally, and there may be other ways, is to identify negative emotions and practice on letting them go, right? So if you watch my channel, you're probably familiar with the letting go practice. You're feeling some strong emotion and you just kind of be with it as deeply as you possibly can, not trying to get rid of it, not trying to fight it, just letting it be there. Slowly over time, they start to resolve themselves, they start to shift and they start to move. A good way you can bring up emotions is to obviously trigger yourself. If you're feeling brave enough to do that, it's a good way to work with them. But also, if you want to develop a new identity, whatever that is, maybe you want to become an entrepreneur, or you want to start your own business, or you want to get in better physical shape, or change your eating habits, whatever it is, think about the thing that you want or the shift you want to make, and it's going to bring up emotional resistance. It's going to be there because if that emotional resistance wasn't there, you would already be that person. The resistance that comes up when you think about your ideal is what is stopping you from becoming that ideal. So envision the direction you want to go. It's going to bring up some emotion, and then you just want to sit with that emotion without resistance, without judgment, not even trying to get rid of it, just being there with it. This is just a powerful meditative practice on its own for releasing negative emotions. But with this practice, it helps you deprogram. It helps you begin to release a lot of like stuck energy and emotion. It's a long-term practice as well. You're just going to keep finding more and more negativity and trauma and stuff that's been trapped in you for a long time. But the sooner you start on this, the sooner you can go to the third stage, which is reprogramming. So reprogramming means you consciously pick an ideal that you want to move toward, that you want to become, and you actually start to move in that direction. So practically what that would look like is thinking about, what does this sort of person do every day? How do they think? What sort of relationships do they have? What are their daily habits? You get a clear idea of what this sort of person would do. And then you start to align your own actions and behaviors and thinking and thoughts and feelings with that ideal. And with practice over and over and over again, you start to become that person. It does take time, and I suggest you just stick to one thing. The one thing I'm going to suggest that you stick to, which is what I said at the beginning, I think everybody needs to work on this one identity shift, is the identity of somebody who is worthy and valuable and powerful. Just that. A powerful person, a valuable person, someone who truly has high self-esteem. This belief, I know a lot of people don't have. It's an internal belief. Once you have internalized that belief and made that a part of your identity, which is actually in alignment with the truth of who you are as well, then you can stack anything on top of that. Then stacking being an entrepreneur, or stacking having a better body, or eating better, or having a dream relationship, it's easier to stack it on top of that. You've built a solid foundation. What I'm afraid a lot of people do with this sort of practice is they don't really go deep enough. And because they don't really go deep enough, they're just still working on the surface level. They haven't really got to the core of how they feel about themselves. They haven't changed these core beliefs, but they might still be trying to shift to become an entrepreneur, or like I said, get a better body, but it's not in alignment because deep down they might not necessarily believe that they are deserving of that. So using this practice of reprogramming, look at someone who is worthy. How does that sort of person act? How does that person treat other people? How does that person treat themselves? And just start to act and behave like that person consistently. Like I said, just stick to one thing. Stick to this one. This is a big one. Changing at this level is a very core fundamental change in your whole being, right? It's the foundation of pretty much who you are. One of the most basic beliefs we have about ourselves is, am I worthy or not? And expect it to be a little bit challenging, expect it to be uncomfortable, because the level you're going to, it's going to create an internal shift in you, which is going to be turbulent. It might be so turbulent that it puts you off. It's going to bring up a lot of energy, a lot of stuck emotion. But again, you can revert back to step 2 of deprogramming and use the meditation practice to be with the emotions as you are reprogramming yourself. So you actually do deprogramming and reprogram kind of together, because the more you start to reprogram, the more you start to move into that new ideal of the worthwhile, powerful person, then it's going to keep bringing up emotion, negative stuff, right? So it's a process. Like I said, when you're working at this depth, you just got to kind of have that mental strength that I always talk about, resilience, consciousness, patience, and just work through it. One other thing you can do as well, which I think is powerful, is to just write a few sentences, or as much as you want, of what this kind of person looks like. This individual who is worthy, powerful, has high self-esteem, really believes in themselves. Like, write out a paragraph or so and just read it every day. That'll take you quite far as well. It'll keep reprogramming you. It'll keep helping you remember how you are being. Right? You're changing who you are being with conscious intention. You do that enough, you display it through action and behavior, you will actually start to change. And that is actually a very key point I touched on there, is to the actions and behaviors. If you really started to believe you were a worthwhile, high value person, how would you act? How would you behave? And then start to implement them behaviors and actions in what you do every day, right? It requires consciousness. When you just start to change how you're acting, you start to change who you are being. It's literally like faking it till you make it. But we're doing it with a lot of conscious intention. But I wanted to bring this one to you, like this basic fundamental shift of changing how you like really see yourself on a deep level, because then everything else you stack on top of that, it'll be a little bit easier. Okay, so this is a powerful practice, and give it a go, see how it goes, but you've got to stick to it, right, every day. That's why I think writing out a couple of paragraphs, or however much you want to write them, reading every day, reminding yourself, and then practice being it, displaying it through your actions, is going to get you great results. Okay, but for now, that's everything I'm going to talk about. If you did enjoy the video, if you could please go ahead, give it a like, share, subscribe, really helps me out. But until next time, God bless.